Alief ISD is an inner city school district in just outside of Houston, Texas. We're about 40,000 strong students, and we there's 80 plus spoken languages in Alief ISD. Our square footage isn't very big. It's I think 30 square miles, so we're very compact and dense district, and we're not growing per se. In other words, we don't have boundaries that are going to grow like other districts further west of us or around. So we're tied in by highways and byways and stuff like that. So we have to make the most with what we have.
Hi, I'm Steve Harper. I'm the CEO of Owner Insight and the Chief Rippler at the Ripple Effect. And it's my great honor to continue this series called Leadership is a Contact Sport. We're featuring leaders at school districts that are doing amazing work and getting their perspectives on what it takes to be a good leader, how to run a great organization, and learn from their vast years of experience. We hope through this process to bring visibility to districts that are doing it right. The pressures, the challenges that school district leaders are facing today are so numerous and so mounting. And I think the vast majority of us don't recognize just how much pressure they're under. So when you find a great leader that's doing a great job, they really deserve the recognition. It's what we hope to bring to you with this series. Today's guest, Glenn Jarrett, is a long-standing friend of mine, someone that I have worked with directly through Owner Insight, and someone that I have and consider a good friend. I've built a really strong relationship and have grown a true friendship with him. And I'm always impressed by how he is looking out ahead of the tip of his skis to always make sure that he's doing the very best job for his school district. He's with Alief ISD in the Houston area, and I am so grateful that he is giving us some time to pick his brain and hear his thoughts on why leadership is a contact sport and what it means in how you go about becoming a great, great leader, because he is truly one. So we are going to be in for a treat. So let's dive in. Glenn Jarrett, thank you so much for joining me today for Leadership as a Contact Sport. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Steve. Glad to be here.
I am so grateful. I was super excited about this interview today because you were someone that I've had a professional relationship with for a number of years. We've obviously worked together through Owner Insight, but we've also become friends outside of that. And the thing that I have really come to respect and admire about you is you are a straightforward kind of person. You are a straight shooter. Where does that come from? And is that something that you would consider a valued asset in your leadership style?
Yeah, it comes from my father, actually. He was a straight shooter. You always knew where my dad stood. He was from that older era, grew up during the Depression, several siblings, and just, didn't have anything. And he drove it home. The only thing you have is your word.
Yeah.
And as soon as you give up that, then you're no good to anybody.
Yeah.
He firmly believed in that, and I took that to heart. And then when I got into the construction industry, I quickly learned that not everybody had those same values or character traits. And that took some getting used to and understanding, how it all worked and how different individuals play, and also come from sports and athletics as well,
Sure.
and then through just good mentors all around.
Well, we're gonna dive into a couple of those key areas, but I would say as you first came on or into a leadership role, what would you say is the one thing you wish you knew coming into the leadership kind of space?
Well, the first two I failed miserably at, because when you first get into a leadership role, you have an idea of how it's going to be. You think everyone's going to fall in line, they're going to do what you want, And most times, not every time, but most of the time, you're really not mature enough to handle the responsibility. And so, you thought, well, I'm just going to be a dictatorship, and what I say, they're going to do.
Yep.
Well, you quickly learn that that doesn't necessarily happen.
Right.
So you have to lead by example, number one. Number two, you have to empower the individuals not to be afraid of making a mistake, but yet when they do, to recognize it, come to you, and you got to be able to, even though it may be very aggravating, you got to treat them almost like your own child. You know, we all make mistakes in life.
Yep.
It's how you deal with that and how you correct it and recognize it to hopefully prevent a future one. And the same thing goes in business,
Yep.
you know. And so if you're looking at it that way, when people come to you, and you also got to be willing to sacrifice your own ego to a certain extent, and not everybody learns at the same pace you learn. Not everybody may, like for me, I know math for one thing. I can't do it quickly in my head like some people can do it, just prattle it off. I have to stop and think a minute.
Yep.
Where other things, my memory, I've got a photo memory of certain things and I can remember. So those type of things, you got to learn of your group of what their strong points are, what their weaknesses are, and build that cohesiveness together to work as a unit.
I love that. You mentioned that you had mentors along the way aside from your dad. Is there any specific mentor that, as you moved into this leadership capacity with the district or in the school space in general? Because I know you had been with a larger institution prior to coming to Leaf. Was there a mentor or two along the way that maybe really influenced how you lead today?
Probably a couple. One was when I was fresh out of college, went to work for a small architectural firm. The gentleman that hired me was an older, I think in his former life, he may have been a football coach. He was a big German built guy, very straightforward. And, I learned a lot from Tom. And the one thing that I learned quickly from Tom was we had a project. We were a growing company. We'd gotten a very large contract with a very large corporation that did multi-billion dollars worth of gigantic contracts. And so we weren't used to working with all their requirements and everything that they had. So long story short, Tom had been trying to run a project and he was doing well. Well, I'd gotten my projects done and came to him for additional work assignments. He's like, look, I need you to go to Michigan, take over this project for me. And um, here's the deal, it's not going well. I've screwed it up. I've got the client mad at me.
Ah,
They don't want to see me. I need you to go up there and fix it. You can use me as the fall guy, but I need you to take care of it. We can't afford for this contract to be canceled. Well, that kind of taught me a couple things. That one, it's okay to to be the sacrificial lamb
yep.
and recognize where you messed up and know that you need to correct it. So one up there did that. The other was at the higher education institution. My boss there, he had been with them for years, come up through the ranks as a teacher all the way up, and finally made it ascended to administrative level. And his whole focus was very different. It was much more of a uh, team. He managed by a team concept. You
Okay.
know, everybody had an input, but at the end of the day, he always made the decision. And he would always come back to us and say, "Okay, this is why I did what I did. It may not make sense to all of you, but this is the reason why I
Mm,
did what I did." So that way, it quickly taught me, it cut down on the back room chatter at the water cooler of, man, I can't believe he did this. I can't
yep.
believe, because everybody knew why he made the decision of what impacted us as a unit. So those were a couple quick examples.
I love that, and I think there's a lot to be unpacked there, right? Tom, your first example having the humility to say, look, I screwed up. I need to be the scapegoat, but I need to be able to own that to a subordinate and say, but
Hmm.
I need you to go fix it and utilize me if you can or need to as the fall guy. I think that that shows a tremendous mental acuity on his part, right? And
Right,
understanding that you still got to get the mission done, still got to, we got
right,
to get the project, completed, and it doesn't matter what they think of me. We've got to get it resolved, and to have the humility to do that, I think, is fantastic. And then your second example, where I think good leaders do want to hear from all the people that have input that can help us further the progress, but
hmm,
ultimately the decision almost always resides with the leader. And very few leaders actually come back to explain why they make the decision that they do, but sort of having what I sort of call that post-mortem of a big decision
right,
to explain out to the logic behind why I'm doing what I'm doing, I think is really important, because it does, like you said, it cuts down on all the backroom chatter, which is always important. And I think at the end of the day, it also lets you know, hey, Glenn, I heard what you said, and I think it was a valid point, but I'm going to go a different direction, and here's why. You make that person feel valued, appreciated, understood, and that you may be telling them, no, I'm not going to take your idea or your solution and run with it. But here's the reason I'm going the direction I did. But keep those ideas coming, keep that input coming. It shows people that you are trying to be a collaborative leader and that everybody matters, right?
right, right.
I
Correct.
love that. When you look at leadership today and the role that you're in, and the challenges that you face on a day-to-day basis, what surprises you about today's world in terms of how to be an effective leader?
It's a very interesting, and it's a hard topic to go over because
Sure.
there's so many dynamics out there. And really, I relate it to two times. We talk about it around here. It's pre-COVID and post-COVID. There was a big swing. Prior to COVID, everybody went to work. There wasn't, you'd heard that there were some companies trying to swing deals as far as working from home, and then, talking with other, uh, I guess, groups out there.
Yeah,
The millennials got a bad knock because it was always said, well, we can't get the millennials to work. We got to. I remember talking to a couple architectural firms being at their office and was like, wow, you guys are remodeling. And they're like, well, we're redoing our break room area to kind of appease the millennials to give them R&R break time and stuff. And I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah. So that was interesting to see that. And then post COVID, it seems like the shift has come to a more augmented style of office environment.
hmm,
Not so much in my business here at the school, but the people that I interact with in my department, it's about a 60-40 split. 40% is my school district interaction with the projects. The other 60% is dealing with outside entities, being whether it's architects, contractors, other design professional groups, and learning to cope with their new business model.
sure.
And being adaptive and stuff. And they have lay down offices now, what they call lay down offices, where they huddle up once a week. And I talk to them about it because on my end, I see gaps in quality. I see gaps in actual human interaction and communicating. And I think you need that in order to effectively manage large capital projects, or really any project.
Yeah.
You know, so I hope I answered your question.
No, I think that's like you said. I mean, the dynamics of the work environment is shifting in such a way. So it sounds like you've had to adapt along with it, but you're trying to be as accommodating as you possibly can. But the thing you hit on that I really don't want to lose sight of, that I think our audience would really benefit from, is having an understanding of how to communicate, to create that environment where communication can happen. One of the things that Sort of one of the things in my bailiwick is that if we're not talking, we're not working, right? We're not
Correct.
really able to collaborate, and there's only so much that you can do through electronic communication or text message or Slack or any of the tools that are out there. Nothing replaces the ability to be able to shoulder up next to somebody and have a conversation and discuss issues, that are small now, and come together with an idea of how to resolve that before it becomes a big issue. Or hey, what are you doing, so I know where you're at, so where I'm at, so that we can get there together, right? And I think great leaders really understand the value of that. Leadership is a contact sport, right? You've got to
It is.
bring people together so that they can get to know each other. They can build those relationships and develop that level of trust, because it doesn't matter whether it's construction or whether it's launching a new software product or starting a company from scratch. The reality is, if people are all going off in their own direction with their own proclivities and understanding of what's important to them, but not necessarily recognizing where they fit as a cog in the wheel of the machine. There's just so many ways that things can get broken, right, along the way.
Right.
Communication is critical.
And also, it's I think a good leader is also one who is flexible. And
Yep.
what I mean by flexible is willing to adapt new ways of achieving the end goal. For instance, I'll go back to two of our pre-K centers that we were recently done within the last couple of years. One of them, we were able to, I think we were three quarters way through the design before COVID. The other one, we had just started. We only had one face-to-face meeting before COVID broke out, and both of them were running concurrently through, design. So the second facility was designed all basically virtual through our A-Leaf staff, the design professional staff, and then bid and delivered. So we quickly learned to adapt to what we needed to do because we didn't lose sight of the fact, yes, we are in this COVID period. We don't know when we'll come out of it, but we know eventually we will, and we'll get back to teaching in some form or fashion of
Sure.
how we were doing it before. So we knew that we couldn't just table everything and wait. Things had to move forward. So that was a learning experience, and what come out of that was the fact that we don't need to have quite as many face-to-face meetings. We can do a lot more Zoom or through other means and methods, but it made for quicker and more productive meetings, I think, overall. So we've adapted, or I've adapted here. The only time we meet in persons on different milestone dates, but most of the production, if I want to see where we're at production wise on a set of documents, I can get my design professional on. We can hop on a quick Zoom, go through Bluebeam Studio or whatever, and work it through and resolve issues versus waiting until we have a scheduled face to face meeting and waste a couple weeks of production time. Because I try to be cognizant of the people that I work with. I don't like to waste my um, staff here at A-Leaf's time because their focus is on educating the kids and dealing with their day-to-day problems. And
Sure.
then my design professionals and or my contractors are all about getting the job done and working efficiently. So, and then I value that back to me too, because I don't want them necessarily wasting my time with needless meetings or back and forth, so I'd rather just hop on, get it done, and move on.
Exactly. Well, and when you build that good relationship with the people that you're leading, whether that's internal or external, once you've created that environment, everybody kind of appreciates that, right? You're helping
Right.
them be efficient. You're leading from the front of the room, but still at the end of the day, you're giving them the flexibility to be adaptable. And I think that's really important. You see that in a lot of different environments where, well, we've always done it this way. We don't have any flexibility, and then we can't really understand why we lose people because the inflexibility is too much for people, and
Right.
and so a lot of times you lose core talent because you're not adapting with the times. And so I think that's a brilliant example that you just gave.
Thank you.
I've got flexibility, adaptability. Where does accountability play into your leadership philosophy, and how do you hold people accountable to do what they are supposed to do when they're supposed to do it?
I think accountability starts with the person. In other
Yep.
words, myself. If I hold myself accountable, then if as I move forward and with my people, I always communicate with them upfront. We usually have every corporation, whether it's a school business or whatever, has to do the obligatory HR, you know, uh, reviews and
Yeah.
things of that nature. It's just part of it.
Sure.
But I try to do it, I try to hold those and let them know, okay, at the beginning of the year, I like to sit down and establish our goals. What is our goal in our department? And yeah, we have a lot of the same goals. Like number one, we want to be more efficient. We want to be a better communicator. Okay, well, how do we do that? And it's looking inward and outward to say, what did we do? Everyone loves to focus on what you did great. Nobody really likes to hear what you did poorly at.
Yep.
But the hard fact is the only way you can get better is to recognize what you've done poorly and improve upon that. So, good or bad, I like to sit down with my staff. My staff of one. I currently only have one project manager, so my staff of one, and go through and say, okay, here's what we did well as a group. Here's where I probably could have done better to help you. Here's what you did well, and here's what you could have done better to either work with our business unit and or the people who we assist.
Sure.
And it's not only like the teachers and the principals, we also work closely with our maintenance staff here at the district. So it's how well we and now it's two separate departments, but we still interact because we're making decisions that will impact them after we turn it over to them, and then vice versa, they're making decisions that will impact us during the warranty period and then beyond for our work, and it's how well we communicate with those other groups. So those are key fundamentals, and it's going back periodically and checking those, not waiting until the following year to say, well, what did we do? Did we do it good? Did we do it? No, it's monitoring it and keeping yourself online, because we can easily lose focus, get sidetracked, and try to and the other thing I try to tell my staff is keep emotion out of it,
Yep.
because the minute you allow emotion to come into a conversation or working with somebody, then you're immediately going to set yourself up to a bad failure,
Yeah.
you know.
I,
And
I love I love that point. So, just to build off that for a second, how have you learned to cope when you know that emotions are running high? Maybe somebody dropped a ball, somebody made a decision that, has a dire consequence. How do you hold yourself accountable to control that emotion in the moment? And do you use that as kind of a tip and a suggestion for the folks that you're chosen to lead?
well, part of it's maturity. I used to, back a few years ago, I could go toe to toe with the best and had the old, probably not use the best language, but that was part of the old, and that's part of developing too, Steve.
Sure.
The old school of contracting.
Yeah.
If you weren't a forceful person, and the old school guys would always say, "I can't allow that guy to walk over me, or nobody will respect me."
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they dealt with it. If they brought a hammer, he brought a sledgehammer to the meeting. And that's the way it was.
Yeah.
And I was that way for a long time, and I would allow emotion to get into it. And I think it's maturity. I think a little bit of it is I've become more and more of a spiritual person, so I lean
Yep.
on that a lot.
Yep.
And I think I think at it's an evolving thing. So I, like I said, I don't allow emotion to come into, because really, if you do, then you can one, you can really say something, do something that's going to affect long term decision making.
Both adversely and in a positive way, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
Correct. Because, I didn't realize, and I look back on certain things, and I'm like, I wonder why, so and so, went into a clam shell. Well, it's because of the way, and I have to also be self aware because I'm a very tall person. I'm 6'4". I'm 320 some pounds, on a good day. And, and I, and I talk loud, and it's not, and part of it's hearing loss, and my wife has made me more self-aware of that. It's like, I don't think you realize how loud you are. And then when I really stopped and thought, I'm like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
And I could tell I wasn't really, people would say, hey, why are you mad at me? I'm like, I'm not mad at you. And they're like, well, you sure sound like you are. And I'm like, okay, maybe I need to dial it back a little bit and try to be more of a monotone, and not necessarily. I don't want to sound like you're not like caving or modeling for something. You're just being more self-aware, I guess.
Sure. Sure.
And so and it's how you engage others to where you can effectively. It's I guess one of the books out there is The Art of Effective Communicating.
Yep. It's a
You
great book.
know, and it's weird when I started doing self analysis and listening to others speak. I'm like, God, I used to talk that way, and now it's terrible. And but yet, and you listen to other coaches are probably the best successful coaches
Sure.
are probably the very best communicators out there. You listen to a Nick Saban, you listen
Yep.
to Lou Holtz, any of those effective coaches, they're effective communicators. And they're able to get young men to do things that they would never ever be able to do. And how do they do it? They communicate effectively,
Yep.
and they give direct. What do I want to say? Direct. They give direct communication, Steve.
Yep.
They're very
And realistic, valuable feedback, right?
correct.
They don't just chew them out for a reason, for no reason.
Right. Well, and I remember playing sports. We'd always get in. I could never understand why the coach was mad after a win, because he could always. And what he was doing was like, look, don't get too high on the moment.
Yeah.
Because yes, you scored 3 touchdowns, but you allowed this guy to get 280 yards on you. You allowed this guy to do this. You allowed them to do that, and we had XYZ penalties. You jumped offside 3 times when, you cost us 30 yards, those type of things. Well, all that can relate back to business as well too,
Sure.
you know?
Well, I think you touched on something very important there, right? And I think at the end of the day, when you think of that last example you gave with the coach, right, is there's a difference between complacency and continual improvement. And I
Right.
think complacency is, hey, we got the win, we're great. Yes, we had a couple of things that we could have done better, but let's celebrate the win, right? And I think good leaders, and you just hit on that in a way that I want to make sure the audience picks up on. Good leaders are always evolving. They're always looking for the next great idea. They're always looking for who else is doing it better than they are and learning from them, whether it's, watching, like you said, the Nick Saban speeches, the Lou Holtz speeches, the people that are out there that, have the ability to step up and affect lives and the work product. And that's true across any industry, anywhere. But great leaders are continually figuring out that, they have to evolve. And how you are today as a leader may be vastly different 5 years from now. And it's
Correct.
certainly vastly different than what you were 20 years ago. And I see, individuals that that don't recognize that part of their responsibility as a leader is to put as much emphasis and effort in showing up every day to be the best leader you can, which means you never stop learning, you never stop exposing yourself to great content, great books, evolving your communication style. It's a continual process. It's not just because you now have the name on the door and you got the business card to go with it that all of a sudden you've arrived. In fact, actually, your journey just began, and it still is a continual journey to get better every single day. Because as you're doing that for yourself, by extension, you're also bringing those around you and making them better in their own capacities.
Correct. One thing I want to circle back on too, as part of his leadership was I had a unique availability to do something. I had those two pre-K centers that started virtually the same time and they ended at the same time, as far as school year goes. So, I'd always been wanting to do it. We talked about doing it on another project that was, that had finished. And this was prior to me becoming the director. I was just a project manager, but we had talked about it and we'd done it. I had done it at the higher ed area, and it's probably at that time it was probably a little bit more common. But so here, what I did was I brought both groups together from one of the pre-K centers and then the other pre-K center, and we had a lesson learned meeting.
Oh, yep.
And so I brought in the contractor, both architectural firms and the consultants that were part of that team, the main consultants like the mechanical engineer, electrical engineer, and I brought in our interns that I had. I had a group of interns that were working with us on our projects that summer. And so, and I told I told the group, I'm like, look, this meeting is not intended to point fingers at anybody. I want to learn how we as a business unit, A-Leaf ISD, could have done a better job in communicating to you from the very beginning to the very end. And I also want you guys as a group to tell me, we went through, you know, and it was weird like most anything, at the very beginning, they were very hesitant to speak up. But as we went
Sure.
through it, and I told them, I said, look, we're going to do, and it was an all day deal. We brought in lunch and I said, okay, we broke it up into different groups and we went through, and I had more positive feedback after the fact from different people who I hadn't expected to hear back from
That's
that
great.
say, you know what? I got more benefit because I didn't realize XYZ affected this, both from a contractor standpoint and an architectural standpoint and from a consultant standpoint. Because they didn't really, and same for us, there was things that come out of that meeting that we didn't realize, impacted them, caused a delay, or for them to complete a scoping issue and vice versa, and then and then we broke it down. Okay, how could we done it? How can we improve our warranty closeout phase? How can we improve this? How can we, what worked well here? What didn't work well? And I think everybody gained something from that meeting.
Well, I mean, the takeaway there is you're asking good questions, right? Some of the which, the answers may not be exactly what you're hoping for or what you wish had happened in the time, but those questions allow you to go back and look at it with perspective. And it also gives people the opportunity to communicate freely about what worked, what didn't. And then that with your sort of underlying theme is how do we get better? For
Right.
the next project, how do we get better to interact with you as an outside consultant and engage, in better, more appropriate communication so that we make your job as easy as we possibly can. Because when you do that, you make our job easier internally. I think that's brilliant. I think that's fantastic.
One of the big things that come out of that, Steve, was the fact that we initiated it's a superintendent's project action team. And so we learned that even though we thought we'd done an excellent job of getting input from our educational staff, we learned that we didn't really do an adequate job of seeking information from those who we are expecting to use the facility, and that's our public
Yep.
and some others. So now, we've instituted, we're in our second one now. We instituted one for
That's
our new facility center, and then we're doing one for our next project, which is we're looking to improve our current press box at our stadium. So what we have is we have students, we have parents, we have faculty, and we have board representation that's part of that group. And it's part of the initial phase, the scoping phase of the project, and we have the architectural design team, and if we have a contractor on board, they're part of it. So all those entities are together, and then once we're through with the we once you're up to a certain point, which is usually right at your schematic phase,
yeah.
that group goes away. We continue to do our work. We reconvene them to show them, okay, as we're going through the process, we reconvene to show them, okay, here's what we took away from this meeting. Here's what we think we heard, and how we implied it. Are we on the correct path? Did we hear you correctly? And you know and we run those, and it's been effective.
That's
You
oh,
know.
that's a great takeaway for our audience, right? For a district out there that maybe isn't doing that to really, not only what you said about the post construction and the project closeout, but also pre. And you could do that whether you're working in construction or, a major project like that, or you just have a different initiative, a new education program rollout. How you can incorporate a same kind of process so that everybody has their say, but collectively everybody at the table's got an opportunity to give input about what needs to happen next. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, and overall, it impacts the overall project by about a couple months.
Yep.
Okay, but it's far. I think that 2 months of impact in time duration greatly improves the overall project, because at the end of the day, we want our public and our students to feel like they're part of something here.
Yeah.
If we're going to continue to ask the public to support us, whether that's bond referendums, just staying within our district, not moving out of our district to go to some other district, you know, you can't be an isolationist.
Yeah.
You have to involve it.
I love that. I love that. That's such a great takeaway. I appreciate you sharing that with us, Glenn. I could talk to you all day, but I've got a couple of questions just to wrap up.
Okay.
Just because I think there's so many nuggets that you've shared today, and I'm so grateful for that. First and foremost, I want to acknowledge from my own perspective what kind of leader you are. You are when I think about heart-centered leaders, people who actually genuinely care and want to get to know the people that they work with. You are top of that list. You are someone that really has. I I think the former version of you that was maybe a little more intimidating, right? I think would have been scary for sure. But I think the version that I know of you is that you do lead with your heart and you do care about people and you are very genuine. And it's obvious in the processes and the approach that you're taking, which is why the district's so lucky to have you, because the way that you've evolved as a leader, I think really it stands as a representation of the district. And I think at the end of the day, that's one thing I want our audience to take away is we all have brands that we represent. It could be our jobs, in your case, a school district, it could be a company. And that's our professional sort of suit of armor that we put on. But we also have that personal brand, that way that people look at us as individuals that show up. And when you think about as a leader, how you want people to perceive you, how you want people to benefit from the time that they have with you, you always, as a leader, want to make people better. And I think at the end of the day, you do that just by extension. And you've been really good at saying, hey, I think you guys ought to think about this for the software. I think you ought to be aware of these other things that are out there going on. But you're always looking out for the other guy, which I really, truly appreciate, because that shows a servant's heart in leadership that I think is really, really phenomenal. So I just wanted to acknowledge that because it has been an absolute pleasure to get to know the professional side of you and the leadership side, but also the personal side because I think there's not a big difference there, and I think that's one of the things I want maybe a young leader to take away that might see this today is that it's a journey. It's not a destination when you become a leader. It's something that you need to always recognize is something that you continue to invest in your time and your effort to always get better because everybody pays attention and everybody's aware. And whether you have a leadership role or a title that goes with that, we're all technically leaders. We all can show up and do the best jobs that we possibly can and represent ourselves and our personal brand and our professional brand just by the effort and how we treat other people.
That is very true, Steve. One thing, and it starts from the top here. We've got very good leadership here at the district. I've been very fortunate that you know we've been able to retain good people. Do they want to stay here? It's not,
That's great.
historically, everybody knows school districts aren't the best payers. I mean, they pay fair, but obviously in the open market out there, they can obviously make more money in different areas. However, I think one thing that keeps good people here, is the fact that they know that their thoughts and opinions are valued
Yeah.
and they're appreciated, and I think that goes a long way. Short-term benefit, everyone says, "Oh, I want more money." Well, that's only a short-term benefit. Once that euphoria of the pay raise is gone,
What
then
are you left with? Yep.
exactly,
Yeah. I
exactly.
love that. Well, so I would be remiss if I didn't throw in a couple of ripple questions just to wrap this thing up and
All right.
bring it home. So hopefully you're okay with that. But what did the 7-year-old version of Glenn want to be when he grew up?
An astronaut, because I was named after two astronauts, John Glenn and Alan Shepard.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Yeah,
Oh, see, I learned something about you. I did not know that.
yeah.
That's awesome.
I was
Um,
supposed. Oh, Steve, I was supposed to
no,
be a girl, by the way. I'd have made a homely female.
oh, well, hey, it worked out. It worked
It
out
worked.
exactly the way it's supposed to. What was your sport when you played sports?
Baseball, and I grew up in the Midwest, so wrestling was a big thing. A little bit of football, but mostly wrestling and baseball, and also basketball.
Ah, so yeah, very well rounded. I love that.
Yeah.
What would be the best thing you could hear a coworker, kind of the same thing, a consultant or vendor partner, or just a close personal friend say about Glenn?
Oh man. Well, that I was caring, honest, and they could rely on me.
Love it. That's great. If there was an opportunity to put a billboard out with one phrase that everybody would see, what would Glenn Jarrett's phrase be?
The only easy day was yesterday. Stealing it from the Navy SEALs.
I love it. I love it. That's a that's great. I have
Yeah,
never gotten that
that's
one.
the
So
Navy
that's
SEAL
fantastic.
motto.
Yep. I love that. It's excellent. Okay. Last two questions. When you hear the term the ripple effect, what does the ripple effect mean to you?
Well, we're only on this planet a short period of time, and it's how many people can you affect in a positive way, and I think that's, in my mind, that's the ripple effect.
I love that. That's a great answer. What ripples can myself or anyone that might watch this video do for you? What kind of ripple would you need in your life or career that someone could help you with?
Well, really, it's hopefully you've gained something from this interview to where you become a more effective leader, and whatever you are a leader in, whether it's a leader in the school business, out in the public private sector, to where you're able to take a young person and mentor them into becoming a quality person to provide benefit to other human beings here.
Ah, That is well said. I love that. I love that so much. Thank you so much for the time today.
I,
You are an inspiration, my friend, and I'm so grateful to know you and to work with you, and also to be able to call you a friend. So thanks so much for what you do.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate everything that you've been able to help us with here at the district as well, too, Steve. I'd be
Ah, thank
remiss
you. It
if
means
I
the world
didn't
to me.
mention that as well. You've been
Well,
a huge, you and your group have been a big supporter of A-Leaf, and it doesn't go unnoticed.
well, we appreciate it. It's easy to support great people like yourself and your team. I mean, you've got a great district, so we're so grateful to work with you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for the time. We'll be back with another episode of Leadership as a Contact Sport very soon. But until then, you guys take care. And as always, ripple on.